The knocking started at 2 a.m., 3 slow knocks, then silence. At first I told myself it was nothing, a neighbor, wrong door, someone who had too much to drink and couldn't find their apartment. But when I looked through the peephole, the hallway was empty. Both directions, nothing. And that should have made me feel better. It didn't, because an empty hallway at 2 a.m., after 3 deliberate knocks, is worse than seeing someone standing there. At least if someone's there, you know where they are. I'd been living in that apartment for about 8 months when it happened. 6th floor, east side of the city. Not a bad building. Not luxury, but clean. Predictable. The kind of place where you ride the elevator with the same 3 people every morning and never learn their names. Everyone kept to themselves. I liked that. I worked from home back then, so my schedule was off. Late nights, late mornings. But that night, for once, I went to bed early. Around 10:30. It was cold, so I turned the heat up, got comfortable, and I was already drifting when my phone lit up. 11:47 p.m. That's when the knocking started. 3 knocks, slow, even, deliberate, not loud, not urgent, just intentional. I sat up and waited for a voice. Nothing, just silence. I laid back down, figured it was a mistake, wrong floor, wrong door. Happens all the time in buildings like that. I pulled the blanket back up. Then it happened again. Same knock, same spacing, same exact rhythm, like it had been repeated. That's what got to me, because drunk people don't knock the same way twice. This was controlled, identical. I got out of bed, didn't turn the lights on. I don't know why. It just didn't feel right. I walked through the dark apartment and looked through the peephole. Empty. The hallway light was flickering slightly, just enough to make everything feel off. But I could see clearly. Left, elevator, right, stairwell, no one. I stood there for almost 2 minutes, hand on the door, not opening it. That's when I noticed the light, the thin strip under my door, the one that always glows from the hallway. It was gone, completely black, like something was pressed flat against the other side, right up against the door. 6 inches from me. I stopped breathing. Neither of us moved. No knocking, no shifting, just stillness, like they were waiting. I stepped back slowly, grabbed my phone, stood in the middle of the living room trying to make sense of it. Then I heard it, a slow drag, starting at the top of the door and pulling all the way down, like fingers pressed flat, sliding down the wood, deliberate, not a mistake, a message. I called the front desk, told them someone was at my door, needed someone on the 6th floor immediately. They put me on hold. It felt like forever. When the guy came back, his voice was different, lower, careful. He said the hallway camera was completely black. Someone had covered the lens. He told me not to open the door. I wasn't going to. A few seconds later, the light under the door came back. Whatever had been there had moved. Security arrived 4 minutes later, knocked, announced himself, checked the hallway, stairwell, elevator, no one. But near the fire exit, he found something, a small piece of black electrical tape, the same kind covering the camera. That's when it hit me. This wasn't random. They came prepared, covered the camera first, then came to my door. They stood there, knowing no one could see them. They checked the elevator footage later. A man in a dark jacket came up around 11:30, never came back down. He used the stairs, avoided every camera. I moved out 2 months later, but I still think about it, because they never tried to get in, never touched the handle, never forced anything. They just stood there, in the dark, making sure I knew they were there. And the worst part? I think they'd done it before. I still don't know what I would have done if I'd opened that door. Seriously, what would you have done? Because half asleep, late at night, most people would at least crack it open And that's the scary part. They didn't need to force anything. Just being there was enough. But this next one is worse, because there were no neighbors, no cameras, no one nearby. Just a motel at the end of a dark road, and no signal. I've only told this story twice in my life. Once to a detective the morning after it happened. Once to my brother about a year later when I finally felt like I could say it out loud without my hands shaking. This is the third time. I was 26. I'd had a rough few months, the kind where you just need to move, need to see different roads and different skies for a while. So I packed a bag, got in my car, and started driving up the coast with no real plan. I'd find somewhere to sleep when I got tired. That was the whole itinerary. By the second night, I was deep into rural Northern California. It was late, past 11, and I'd been driving for a long time. I wasn't being picky. When I saw a motel sign with a light on, I pulled in. Small place. 12 rooms, maybe. Hand-painted sign out front. Tree line on 3 sides, thick and dark. The parking lot had a few cars, but the place felt mostly empty. There was a light on at the front desk, and that was enough for me. The man working the desk was older. Quiet in a way that felt less like shyness and more like he just didn't see the point in talking. He took my card, handed me a physical key, not a card key, an actual metal key on a plastic fob, told me checkout was at 11 and went back to looking at whatever was on the small TV behind the counter. My room was at the far end of the building, room 11, the last door before the tree line began. I noticed, pulling my car around, that there were only 2 other vehicles in the lot. Neither was parked anywhere near my end. That whole side of the building felt empty and cut off from the rest of the lot. I went inside, took a shower, turned on the TV. The reception was almost useless. Heavy static on every channel, occasional voices cutting in and out. My phone showed 1 bar of signal, and then none. I turned the TV off, figured I'd just sleep and drive out at first light. I was in bed, lights off, just starting to drift, when I heard the knocking. 4 knocks, soft but clear, evenly spaced. I lay still for a second, thinking maybe I'd imagined it. Then I got up, went to the door, and looked through the peephole. There was a woman standing outside, mid-20s maybe, pale. Her hair was damp, pushed back, like she'd been standing in the cold for a while, but it hadn't been raining when I pulled in, and it wasn't raining now. She was hugging her arms across her chest. She looked scared. But here's the thing. Not scared the way you look when you've locked yourself out of your room. Scared the way you look when something much worse than that is happening. I put the chain on before I cracked the door. She said she was staying in the room next to mine and had locked herself out. She asked if she could use my phone to call the front desk and get another key. Her voice was barely above a whisper. She wasn't looking directly at me. Her eyes kept moving past my shoulder, like she was scanning the parking lot behind me, like she was watching for something I hadn't seen yet. I told her to hold on and I'd call the front desk for her. I turned slightly to pick up my phone from the table beside the door. That's when I heard the footstep. 1 heavy step on the concrete walkway, then another, coming from the direction of the tree line. Slow, unhurried, like someone who knew exactly where they were going and wasn't worried about being heard. She heard it too. I could tell by the way her whole body went rigid. She looked straight at me, not past me this time, directly at me. And she said very quietly, "Don't let him hear you." Then she pressed herself completely flat against the wall right beside my door and went still. Totally still, like she'd done this before. Like she'd already figured out exactly where to stand so she couldn't be seen from the walkway. I stepped back from the crack and put my eye to the peephole. He came into frame slowly. Big, wide through the shoulders, dark jacket. He walked to my door and stopped. Just stopped right there in front of it. He didn't raise his hand to knock, didn't say anything. Just stood there facing my door with his hands at his sides. And then I heard him breathing. It shouldn't have been audible through a motel door. But the night was completely silent, and he was close, and I could hear it. Slow and even. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The breathing of someone who was perfectly calm. I tried 911. My phone showed no signal. I tried again. Nothing. Not even a single ring, not even a recording. Complete dead zone. I switched to texting, tried to send something, watched it sit in the outbox going nowhere. I don't know how long the three of us stayed like that. Her flat against the wall outside. Me standing frozen just inside the door. Him breathing in the dark on the other side. It felt like 10 minutes. Looking back, it was probably closer to 2 or 3. Then he turned and walked away. Same slow pace. Unhurried. Back in the direction of the trees until I couldn't hear his footsteps anymore. I gave it another full minute before I unlatched the chain. I pulled her inside and she sat down on the edge of the bed and just kind of folded. Shaking. Not dramatically. Just this deep, constant tremor in her hands and shoulders that she couldn't stop. She told me she'd checked in a few hours before me. When she arrived, the man had already been in the parking lot. She assumed he was another guest, but he never went to a room. He just walked the lot back and forth for over an hour. And when she finally went inside and pulled her curtains closed, she heard his footsteps stop directly outside her window. And they stayed there. We pushed the dresser in front of my door and sat on the bed and waited. I tried my phone every 10 or 15 minutes. Nothing until about 5 in the morning, when I picked up one bar. I called 911 and stayed on with the dispatcher until 2 officers arrived. They found his car pulled off the road about half a mile away, tucked into a dirt turnout behind the trees where you wouldn't see it from the highway. They found him in the area nearby. I won't tell you what they found in that car. I was told, and I wish I hadn't been. Before one of the officers left, he came and stood next to me outside the room for a second and said quietly that the woman coming to knock on my door instead of running to her car or staying alone in her room, that decision was probably the reason both of us were standing there in the morning having that conversation. That man had built the whole thing around us being alone. She made sure we weren't. If real stories like this are your kind of thing, make sure you're subscribed. I post one every week, and I have a lot more where these came from. Because this last one, this is the one I think about the most. There's no arrest at the end, no clean answer. Just my cousin, a house at the end of a road that goes nowhere, and a knock that started at the front door and ended up somewhere it had no business being. My cousin asked me not to use her name when I tell this. I won't. But she said I could share it, and I think it's important that I do, because it's the kind of thing that can happen to anyone who thinks they're in a safe place. She was house sitting for a family she'd known for years. Good people, nice house. The kind of neighborhood that looks calm and residential on paper, but when you're actually there at night you realize how far apart everything is. The street dead-ended into an open field. The closest neighbor was at least 200 feet away, maybe more. No through traffic. No reason for anyone to be on that street unless they lived there or knew someone who did. She'd done it before for the same family. She knew the house, knew the routine, had the 2 dogs for company, big golden retrievers, the kind that are more interested in being petted than guarding anything. She wasn't nervous about it. Why would she be? First 2 nights, nothing at all. Third night, a Thursday, around 9 in the evening, 3 knocks at the front door. She didn't open it right away. She went to the side window first and looked out at the street. There was a car parked in front of the house that she didn't recognize. Dark-colored, maybe navy or black, engine off. No interior light. She couldn't see anyone inside. She went to the peephole. The porch was empty. She called out, asked who was there. Nothing came back. She stood in the hallway for a moment trying to decide what to do. That's when she noticed the dogs. They weren't barking. She'd expected them to bark. They always barked at deliveries, at people walking past, at basically anything. But they were quiet. Worse than quiet. The bigger one, the older male, had turned completely away from the front door and was facing toward the back of the house. His ears were flat. His head was low. He wasn't growling. He was just watching the back of the house like something was already there. That detail alone would have been enough for me to leave. She went through the house and checked every window on the ground floor, all locked. She tried calling the homeowners. They were 3 time zones away, no answer. Sent a text. Went back to the front window and looked out at the street. The car was still there, and that's when she saw the figure. He was standing just past the edge of where the porch light reached, right at the boundary where the light died and the dark yard started. Standing completely still, facing the house. She couldn't make out much detail, just a shape, but it was definitely a person, and they were not moving and they were looking directly at the front of the house. She called me. I picked up on the second ring and I knew immediately that something was wrong. Her voice was flat in a way I'd never heard from her before. Not panicked, controlled. The kind of controlled that people get when they're scared enough that panic feels like a luxury they can't afford. She told me what was happening in short, quiet sentences while I tried to think of what to tell her. And then, while we were still on the phone, she stopped talking mid-sentence. 3 more knocks. But not from the front door. From the back of the house. He had moved. While she was standing at the front window watching the yard, he had walked, quietly, completely undetected, around the entire side of the house. He was now at the back door. I heard her exhale sharply. Then she said, very quietly, that she was going upstairs. She got both dogs into the upstairs bathroom with her and locked the door. She turned the sink faucet on low. She told me later it was because she didn't want her voice carrying through the walls if she needed to talk. I could hear one of the dogs whimpering, the low kind of whimper that means an animal knows something is seriously wrong. And then she whispered to me that she could hear footsteps on the back patio, not leaving, moving slowly, like someone circling, checking, trying different angles. She opened her other line and called 911, kept me on the first. For the next several minutes, I just stayed on the line and listened. Her breathing, the dog, silence, her breathing again. I didn't say much because I didn't want her to have to respond and make noise. I just stayed there so she wasn't completely alone. Then she whispered, and I could hear in her voice that she was trying very hard not to react. She whispered, "I think he's trying the door." A sound came through the phone, faint but unmistakable. Metal working against metal. The specific, deliberate sound of someone using something on a lock. The police arrived 11 minutes after she called. She told me the exact time later because she'd been watching the clock on her phone the entire time, counting. They found the back gate open. They found footprints in the soft dirt along the side of the house, a full path that went from the front yard, along the side, all the way to the back door, and at the back door itself, right around the handle and the lock plate, fresh scratches, tool marks. Someone had been actively working that lock. The car was gone from the street by the time they arrived. The officer my cousin spoke with told her they'd received 2 similar calls from that same general area in the past month. Same basic pattern each time, an unfamiliar car, a figure seen in or near the yard, knocking that moved from one side of the house to another. Both previous times, police arrived and found nothing. No one there. No evidence they could act on. Whoever this was had clearly done this before. They knew how long they had. They knew when to leave. She didn't stay another night in that house. Packed everything while the officer was still standing in the kitchen, drove straight to my place and didn't say much for the rest of that night. She sat on my couch with a blanket pulled up and just stared. I didn't push her to talk. There wasn't much to say. The homeowners installed cameras when they came back. Full coverage. Front, back, both sides, the gate. Motion activated, high resolution. 3 weeks later, at 2:17 in the morning, their phones lit up with a motion alert. Someone was standing at the back gate, right at the spot where the footprints had been. Just standing there in the dark, looking toward the house. By the time anyone arrived, gone. They never found out who it was. Never got a clear image. The figure had stayed just far enough from the camera's angle to avoid being identified. They never found out. And that's the thing about all 3 of these. The apartment, the motel, the house at the end of the street. None of them have clean endings. No names, no clear answers, no way to know what would have happened if things went differently. They all started the same way. A knock. Just a knock. Something so normal. Your first instinct is to ignore it, or worse, to open the door. And now, I don't open it. Not right away. I take my time. I look. I wait. Because sometimes the scariest thing about that knock is how normal it sounds.